There's also this video that I want to watch from Mr. Saintontas. It's talking about Roccia here, so I want to hear his thoughts. Here we go.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's time to talk about the elephant in the room. That is coming later on in the 2.0 patch. And that is Roccia, the newest Havoc sub-DPS's pull value. And let me just say that this character, and we can see
really
pretty
cute.
much everything about her kit, she's right here in Crossing Stars. This character is a bit of a bait. And today, we're going to talk about...
Yeah, we looked at her already. We played her a little bit in the story when they let us, but yeah, we looked at her kit, and she does like 20% basic attack, 25% havoc, or the other way around, I forget which, one or the other. 45% total for like Camellya. You know, Roccia is basically Camellya's second character, like her off DPS, her buffer, whatever. Like JJ de Carlotta, basically.
Why. And so you all probably had the opportunity, if you've gone through the main story quest and you've gotten to Act 3 of version 2.0, to play around with her a little bit. And she does have a fairly interesting kit, right? She can go around, she can create tornadoes, she can bounce around, she says Mamma Mia a lot, some could say even too much. And the problem, well, it's safe to say that nobody actually needs her on the roster. Especially, right, if you're thinking about Camellya and you're thinking about the teams that she can run, right? Right now, Camellya is currently paired with Sanhua, a basic attack buffer. And this team is incredibly strong already. Sanhua, some of the fastest rotation times.
Like the comparison here is like 45% combined between basic attack damage and havoc for Roccia's outro versus Sanhua's is 38% basic attack damage. It's not much lower. So like, if you're going to replace Sanhua with Roccia, probably the line of thought you want to start with is, how much more damage am I going to get out of this? Since Roccia is going to do a combined roughly 45%. That's not exactly how the math ends up. 20 and 25% of two different types of damage does not equal 45%. It's something more like 48 because of how multiplicative things work together. But I digress on that. But like, Sanhua has a really fast on-field time. So Roccia's going to have to do a lot of damage while she's on-field, getting her auto ready to warrant using her. Am I just low-key agreeing with him before I even hear what he's saying? He already said that it's like a bait character. Why does he think it's bait? Hold on.
The game, and you end up dealing a massive amount of damage very, very, very quickly when using this team comp. And so with Roccia, she's coming in and she's doing a lot of things. We can go ahead, we can take a look at her kit over here. And one of the biggest selling points about this character is her ability to buff havoc damage as well as basic attack damage, totaling up to about a 45% bonus as long as you're, able to actually activate it. And based off of the initial testing in the main story quest that we've had, she's able to gain her concerto relatively quickly, but she does have a longer field time than Sanhua to actually get all that buffing potential going. And so with that, let's talk about the value. Let's talk about where and why.
How much longer? That's the important question. And how much damage does she do during that time?
She is a bit of a bait for pretty much every single player because, ladies and gentlemen, you get Sanhua for free, and for a lot of players, she will be at S6. So let's dive right on into it. One of the best parts about Roccia is the...
Which, by the way, when Sanhua is at S6, she additionally gives you a 20% attack buff. Yeah, let's just dive into the game quick and find out. There she is. Attacked by 10% for 20 seconds, stacking up to 2 times. After an ice prison where Glacier is detonated, so you detonate twice while she's on field, so that's 20% for 20 seconds. And that's about how long, maybe not even that long, that Camellya is going to be on field. Very good buff.
The fact that for every 0.1% of her critical rate over 50%, activating her...
How did I manage to perfectly complete your dailies? Fuck if I know, I just did shit.
Her ultimate, or her liberation, will go ahead and increase the attack of every resonator on the team for 30 seconds for up to 200 points. Let's think about it this way, ladies and gentlemen. Her total buffs combined, right? Taking a look at all of these are really personal buffs. Taking a look at...
Hang on, back up, what was that? Every 0.1% of her crit, over 50, you get 1 more attack point. So let's say she's at 80% crit. You probably are going to put, nothing but crit on her. Maybe you did a 4-4-1-1-1 kind of situation to get all the crit. Maybe that's going to be beneficial. Can you get a 4-4-1-1-1 in that set? Or up a second. And can you get 2 forecasts in that set? 1 second, I need to know this. I say Midnight Veil. Yes, you can get 2 forecasts in it. You have a choice between Morelight and the Nightmare Heron. So you could do a double crit thing to get extra crit on her to have more buffs. Whether or not that's going to be a good idea, that's another thing. But you can. I don't know if it's a good idea. No idea. But how much... Hold on. let's say you get up to 80%. How much benefit is that? It's 0.1% crit to 1 point of attack, so that's 10 attack per 1%. You'd only need 70% crit to cap that. That's not unreasonable. You should be able to hit 70% with her when you hit the full bonus. But is that like good? Is that 200 points good? I mean, it's extra, but is it like enough to like pull the character?
And gentlemen, her total buffs combined, right? Taking a look at all of these are really personal buffs. Taking a look at all the buffs combined, she's going to give you about 200 attack and that havoc and basic attack amplification buff of around 45% for Camellya to her total damage in a lot of different ways, as well as that 200 attack, right? When you look at Sanhua at her S6, Sanhua is going to increase the attack of all of the characters on your team by 10% per crystal broken. Usually it's 20% pretty much all of the time for 20 seconds. For most players running Camellya, she's
20%. If you got 2,600 attack on that 20%, hold up, let's do math. 26, how much is that? I would do exact numbers. Fuck it. 2,647 times 1.2. That is more than 200 points of attack. As a matter of fact, multiply 200 by 5, and that's the minimum amount of attack you have to get more bonus out of that 20%, or equal bonus rather, out of that 20% attack. That's 1,200. You need 1,200 attack for it to be equal to Roccia's buff. And if you're going to be up at like 2k or higher, which in game characters, that's what you can expect. The minimum is 2k. It's going to be way easier to get more benefit, more bust hour out of Sanhua, just based off of this math that he's presenting. Let's see that. What's the difference here? Minus the 2647. That's a little over 2.5 times the buff from Roccia. So an S6 Sanhua deck. Granted, if you have her S6, this is where it applies. If you don't have her S6, you don't get this 20% attack. But older accounts probably do. I do. 20% attack is worth way more than 200 flat attack. That 200 flat attack might actually feed into other attack percent buffs, so maybe you might get a grand total of 300 attack out of it. Is your attack percent buffs apply to that? I don't know if they do. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. But 45% roughly combined havoc and basic attack versus 38% and 200 attack versus 20% attack. I'm gonna be honest, Chad, it ain't looking good for Roccia.
She's going to have a base attack of 1,037. And so think about it this way, guys. 20% of 1,037 is higher than 200. And so Sanhua at S6 is already granting.
Wait, I did the math wrong. 1,200 is not the necessary number. It's 1,000. So your 20% attack only goes off of that white number, is that right? Okay, let me pull up my game again. That's important information to have. 962. Mike Thorletta has less attack than that minimum requirement. That's important information to have. Roller has less. What about Camellya? She's the important one. She's over. She gets more out of the 20%. And that Encore. I wouldn't use Roccia with Encore, but what about Encore? Not even close. So, in my case, Camellya still is more. It still gets more out of Sanhua. I didn't know that the base attack is what mattered, which honestly doesn't make sense because that extra 1,600 is from buffs, so I digress. Now that we know, it's still enough.
Or 200 attack buff. It's actually above 200. And so for most players who do have Camellya on a 5-star weapon, you can see over here my red spring at 90 out of 90. Sanhua at S6 is going to provide a higher attack buff than Roccia at S0. And this is the thing, guys. The Sanhua and Camellya team over here, it already destroys content. It already completely obliterates pretty much all of the content in the game that isn't havoc resistant. And so now it's time to talk about some of the other selling points about Roccia's kit. Roccia provides grouping. She provides grouping through the resonance skill that she casts. This will create a tornado. This will create a tornado that will group up the enemies, bring them in, and it actually persists off field. We've seen that in some of the IGN footage and some of the demo footage, and obviously you've been able to experience it yourself. And she also goes ahead and provides another bit of grouping through her magical box, which basically it deals 100 points of havoc damage. It's an echo skill. It deals utility damage and basically replaces your gadget slot, which is typically where you'll find things like flight, you'll find things like your grappling hook, and that's kind of all of the additional stuff she's providing. Obviously, Roccia is going to be doing a lot more damage than Sanhua while on the field, and she's obviously going to have, because of that, greater field time as well as greater personal damage, but sacrifices field time. She's slower. Sanhua's going to have faster rotations, a lot more quick swap potential, potentially be a lot smoother to play, because in a lot of situations, her field time is around 3, 4, 5 seconds at max, and Roccia's is a fair bit longer than that, because you'll have to do this thing like her big bouncy attack where she goes Mamma Mia and then slams down 3 times, and you're going to have to cast her Liberation as well, have a good bit of ER to have the smoothest rotations possible. And if you've been playing Shorekeeper, if you've been playing S0 Shorekeeper,
I don't know if y'all caught the way he said that. He just said rotations like kind of similar to how I say words sometimes. Let's listen to that real quick.
have to cast her Liberation as well, have a good bit of ER to have the smoothest rotations possible.
Rotations. Like the word row, R-O-W, and then tation. I'm just pointing this out because I do that shit all the time. I think it's kind of funny.
And if you've been playing Shorekeeper, if you've been playing S0 Shorekeeper in your teams, you will have noticed that sometimes it can take a while for Camellya to run through her entire rotation. And there's a lot of potential for you to miss out on Shorekeeper's enhanced intro, her discernment, because Camellya's field time is so damn long.
I had done that. I had cut Camellya's rotation short a little bit at the end of her second concerto bar, just to make sure I get Shorekeeper's enhanced intro. I don't know if that's worth it, but I miss out on her stuff a lot where I'm playing Camellya. They've been take too long on Sanhua. Actually, that's really important to know, because if Roccia takes too much time, you're either going to have less on-field time with Camellya, or you're going to miss out the enhanced intro.
And when you combine that with the fact that Roccia is going to have a longer field time as well, my gosh, she might actually only be good in the Shorekeeper team if you're trying to get as much damage as possible if you have Shorekeeper's S1. But you also might simply run out of Shorekeeper's outro buff.
What's her S1? Tell rounds generated by the Resonance Liberation inlet gain the following enhancements: effective range, and buzz extended by 150%. I get out of that fucking circle so easy. Duration extended by 10 seconds. Okay, basically what I'm hearing here is, if you don't have that, you're not getting the entire Roccia and Camellya rotation. You're cutting something off to get the rotation and to get her enhanced intro if you don't have this. You're losing something without this. I don't like that.
At the same time. And so this might mean that across these two teams, you're going to have a much harder and much more complex rotation where you're going to have to go on field with Roccia during Shorekeeper's Concerto buildup, and at the end of the day, have a much more complicated rotation to actually get the most out of the team. So in a lot of ways, this character is going to be way harder to play than Sanhua, have lower damage buffs, and the main upsides that you're going to be having are greater grouping, which obviously it's safe to mention that the Camellya Sanhua team has no grouping at all. You're going to have better grouping, duration grouping, more off-field damage, and higher personal damage from the sub-DPS like Roccia, but smaller buffs and a much larger field time and rotation build-up to actually activate those buffs. However, it is safe to note that at max, this ultra buff is about 7% better and, will amplify Camellya's ultimate a lot more because there is that baseline havoc damage amplification. So using the term smaller buffs isn't quite accurate here. Roccia will buff the damage more, but this attack side, right? This attack buff over here, it's not going to be as much as Sanhua's right off of the bat. As long as Sanhua is working with a Camellya that has a 5-star.
1 second, guys. I need a drink, and my puppy needs to go outside. I'll be right back. Let's see. Roccia needs a buff, or her sig is going to have to give some major rest and concerto energy. Only other thing I could think of is maybe she's meant for Zani. Maybe, you never know. I kinda don't think she's meant for Zani, because Camellya doesn't have her partner yet, but I mean, it could be. Anyway, yeah, I hope they don't resort to putting a bunch of her shit in the SIG, because that's going to be an easy pass for the majority of players. No leaks, thank you. Yeah, we don't do leaks. Anyway, let's continue this video. Where are we? Are we still talking about the bus, or... No, we moved on to him to talking about her kit.
Weapon. So, in short, if you have an S6 Sanhua, this can buff the damage more, but this attack side, right? This attack buff over here, it's not going to be as much as Sanhua's right off of the bat. As long as Sanhua is working with a Camellya that has a 5-star weapon. So, in short, if you have an S6 Sanhua, this character is providing a little bit more damage on the amplification side, a lot more damage on the personal side, more off-field damage through this tornado that will persist off-field, and more grouping through this tornado that you can summon through the utility box. And so this is the pull value at the end of the day, from my opinion. If your Sanhua is at very, very low sequence nodes, and you're trying to get your Camellya team up and running and have the fastest and most success as fast as possible, you can go ahead and pull her. But you have to keep in mind that if I were to rank Roccia as like a 10 or a 9, Sanhua is easily like an 8.5 or a 9 as well. There are trade-offs to pulling this character in that, again, you're gonna have a lot more.
I'm gonna put my opinion in on that. At the 4S6, I would put Sanhua at 8, based off what we know for Roccia, 9, and then S6 Sanhua 10. And honestly speaking, if you have to pick who you pull, if you can't pull everybody, I would skip Roccia anyway, because just a basic S0 Sanhua is still gonna be within a few percent of Roccia, based off of what we know. It sounds like even without her S6, she's gonna be really close to Roccia. So consider the point of you want to build other teams too, but then you have to pick, okay? We're talking you don't have all of your 4 stars to S6 or not, or maybe some of them are, some of them aren't. Let's assume your Sanhua is not S6 yet, but she probably will be in another couple patches, through pulling, right? Let's guess that. Alright. You only can pull Roccia to S0, maybe S1 if you buy out of the shop, but let's assume if you're having to pick your characters, you're probably not buying dupes out of the shop. You're probably buying more pulls to get more characters. If you're not a free-to-play or low spender, this doesn't matter to you, because you're gonna pull every character, at least at a base level anyway. But if you have to pick who you pull, you cannot pull everybody. If you have to pick who you pull, consider that S0 Sanhua is going to be close enough to Roccia's performance that you can probably go ahead, skip her, and work on a different team with Phoebe or Brent. We know their elements, don't know exactly what they do yet, but consider that. Consider that you might just want to pull the next character for a different team when your Sanhua is going to be doing the job just fine. That's a major point that I would consider for everyone that has to pick who you pull. You cannot pull everybody. If you can pull everybody, doesn't matter. Anyway, continue.
Effort in actually getting the rotations right, but the total damage is going to be higher. But it's not like Roccia's attack buff over here is even better than Sanhua's in the first place. And so the trade-offs are really...
Yeah, honestly, I would just call this like icing on the cake. I wouldn't pull her specifically because of this. I'd just say like that's just a nice little extra. 200 points and all that much. I mean, it's kind of nice. I have a question though. What if that 200, like, where does that 200 go? Will that 200 go on the white here, or will it go on the yellow? That's what I want to know. What increases the white? Is it just flat attack values? Or is it just like values from your equipments? Like your weapon and your echoes, and your just static level ups? Does echoes even increase this? Or does echoes go into the yellow? Flat attack from echoes, not percent attack from echoes. You think Roccia's would go into the yellow? It is a flat attack buff, not a percent, but it is a buff. So, I don't know. White is just character and weapons. Echoes are yellow. Gotcha, okay. So, Roccia's would go over here and not get affected by attack percent buffs in that case. As attack percent buffs only affect the white. Okay, if my understanding is correct, this is what I've learned so far while watching this video between him and you guys. Anyway, okay, let's continue. So, we're assuming that the 200 goes on the right side, which means it doesn't get buffed.
The grouping for 80 to 160 pulls, then you have to think about putting a weapon on her to actually get her to a 70% critical rate on Roccia to maximize this buff. And believe me when I say that it could be a little bit difficult to get here if you don't have a crit rate weapon to put on her. And so if you have something like Zhang Liao's weapon, it might be easy. Or if you have something like the Stonard BP weapon, it might be easy. But you also have to factor...
Wait, hold on. Is she a fist weapon user? Back up a second, back up. I want to pull her up in my archive. Not in databank. Where is it at? Gallery? Crossing stars? There we go. Let's look at this real quick. Hold on. What weapon does she use? She punch? She is a weapon user. What's her bus? Crit damage? That's not gonna help that bus. You're not gonna be able to get any crit rate out of her substats, her sub-traces. Okay, that kinda sucks. You say you're gonna get all of her crit rate out of your equipment, which could be a little easier if you have the... For example, you have the his signature increased crit rate. If you have the battle pass weapon, you get some crit rate out of that, 20%. I don't know, you'd probably, to get that full 70%, you'd probably have to like run her with dual forecast crit rate echoes without the crit rate buff on her weapon. That does not sound attractive to me.
In that you might not have a crit rate 5-star weapon, and that means that you would need to have like a crit rate forecast, really good echo substats to get yourself to 70% in the first place. Or you pull her weapon, and her weapon, my gosh, it kind of sucks. I'm gonna be honest, her weapon is kind of bad. This is her weapon. It increases
It's crit rate, so 24% if you pull her weapon, but honestly, I wouldn't be pulling that. I wouldn't be pulling that. I might even want to be pulling her. Attack by 12% every time basic or intro is cast. Heavy attack damage bonus. I mean, 3 seconds? I don't like that. That sounds like it's going to be really hard to maintain. 10 seconds ain't shit.
Increases attack by 12%. Every time basic attack or intro skill is cast, her heavy attack increases by 48% for 3 seconds. This is one of the most specific weapons in the game. And so pulling this means, holy shit, it's kind of only going to be usable on her. And that is pretty rough. Pretty rough for a 5-star limited weapon. There are a lot of weapons like Jinsees, a lot of weapons like Carlottas that are equipable on multiple characters and will buff many members of your roster. This is not really going to work for anybody except her, except unless you want a 12% attack stat stick with critical stats and a high base attack. Zhang Liao's weapon is honestly better, and that is one of the most specific things in the game, because that buffs resonance liberation damage, and at least it works for some of the characters on the roster. There are some characters that just don't use their heavy attack at all, like Zhang Liao, and Yan Wu, bro, doesn't even use a heavy attack either. And so overall, right, this character...
Yeah, hold up on that. As a matter of fact, what all fist weapon characters are there? It'd only be applicable on Johnson, right? Of the fist weapon users? Can we filter this? Okay, so we're just gonna remove that Ling Yang from the equation. Homegirl there does basics. Homeboy there does liberation. He's just kinda does vibration damage. I don't know if he does his heavy attack, but Saintontas just said he doesn't. The only one that I know of that does their heavy attack that is like anything even close to being relevant is Chanshin. And that buff is gonna fall off before she finishes her cast. Cause look at what that buff does. Let's back up a second. Look at what that buff requires you to do. Every time basic or intro skill is cast, heavy attack damage bonus increases by whatever that is, 40-something% for 3 seconds. 3 seconds. Is that enough to get through Johnson's entire channel? Hold on a second. I wanna know that. Is it enough? Let's go find out. Like, I don't even know where to go to find something to fight. Heck with that. Let's go bully the Memphis. Alright, so let's just get her heavy attack gauge filled. I said her heavy attack gauge filled. That's pretty much what it is. Come at me, bro. In my head, I counted like 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi. It went just a little bit over 4. It's like the biggest part of her heavy attack, if I counted right, is not going to fall under that 3-second buff.
And Yan Wu, bro, doesn't even use a heavy attack either. And so overall, right, this character has not a lot of competitive use cases on any team that's kind of like outside of like Havoc. You can definitely think about using her with, okay, it's showing Spectre over here, but y'all know what I'm talking about. You could also think about using her with Havoc Rover. But guys, if you have Camellya, you're not going to be using her with Havoc Rover in pretty much any situation. And if you're pulling a 5-star limited support just to use them with a free-to-play Havoc Rover, you're better off using Danjin instead. The last thing to note is that, yes, she does have a new Sonata set that's going to be very usable on her and give her even more Havoc buffing potential, because this set will increase her Havoc personal damage and then also deal damage on outro while also giving a Havoc bonus on outro.
Hold on, this is Havoc damage and resonance skill damage. This isn't buffing that heavy attack damage like her weapon does, so this doesn't even line up right.
But guys, Sanhua on this set, or Sanhua on Moonlit Clouds, is still gonna absolutely destroy content. And this also means that you're gonna have to grind, right? A new set, really get that crit rate to 70%, do all of those things, put all of that work in, and yeah, it could be a little bit rough. It could be really, really, really rough investing a lot into this character if you already have a built Sanhua. So in total, when it comes to the buffs that Roccia provides relative to Sanhua across all the different sets, right? You've got Midnight Veil, you've got Moonlit Clouds. On average, Roccia's buffing ability for a character like Camellya is going to be around 12 to 13% additional damage. And you can be the one that decides whether or not that is worth up to, you know, 160 pulls, right? You lose the 50-50 and then you go for the guaranteed. But But
Nope,
160
not for me.
pulls is a lot for only 13% damage. But if you are somebody that's going to heavily invest in Roccia, right? If you're going to go ahead and pull all the way up to her S2, as you see over here, that's going to give you about 40%
Hell no.
additional havoc
I ain't pulling
damage
that far.
for
I'm not a
30
will.
seconds,
I ain't
and is
spending.
undoubtedly going to make her the best buffer that she could possibly be. And when you combine that with the personal damage,
That is real nice, though. That's a total of 20% additional havoc damage just by existing. Like, you get through her rotation, 20% havoc damage for 30 seconds. That's plenty low enough to last until the end of Carlotta's rotation. I mean, that's gonna outlast the Stellar Realm.
damage that she's going to provide, because this is a basic attack once again, ladies and gentlemen. If you think about all of that additional damage that's also working for her as well, she is obviously going to have the highest possible contribution in a Camellya team. But at the end of the day, right, we're looking at S0 performance, not the super heavy investment. You know, as you invest more in a limited 5-star, you'll get a lot more performance, and you can decide whether or not she's worth all of that expenditure just to buff at the end.
That right there, by the way, guys, is the important thing to consider. We're comparing Sanhua to an S0 Roccia with all of these opinions. If you're pulling hard and get resonance chains, I mean, obviously she's gonna do better, right? That S2 alone is another 20% that's probably worth it. Little side note, by the way, her little hair clippy thing looks like a key.
End of the day, right? One team. If you're free to play, if you're a low spender, if you really like her, pull for her. If you really need the grouping, pull for her. But otherwise, if you're looking for just like damage max, you know, amplifying Camellya's damage, getting the most out of her rotations, giving her an even like easier to use playstyle, just stick with Sanhua. You have to keep in mind that Phoebe and Brant are also coming in version 2.1, and you know, depending on what their kits are, right? We might get a preview. We're going to get a preview of, I believe, Phoebe, and know a little bit about what's in her kit by the time Roccia's banner is ending. And so if you are thinking about really pulling her, but you are thinking about the characters that are coming in 2.1, I do suggest waiting until the last couple of days.
That is the biggest important part. Like I said earlier, if you have to pick your pulls, you need to consider who's coming out after her, that you won't be able to pull if you pull her instead. You have to skip her if you're going to pull the next character or the character after that. Unless you have just been not pulling for a long time and have a shit ton of pulls saved up, which is how many people? Probably not many. Yeah, I'm gonna skip her, guys. I am pretty much, like, I was already planning to skip her. Like, didn't really feel like I needed to have her to go with my Camellya. Because, yeah, my Sanhua is the 6th and does the job. I don't feel like I need her. But after looking at all of this, like, you can't really run her, Camellya, and Shorekeeper together and get 100% of every one of their kits. You're gonna miss something, either the Stellar Realm, a little bit of her on-field time, or a little bit of Camellya's on-field time. You can't get all of it in one rotation. You're gonna miss something. Though with Sanhua, you don't miss any of that. Faster rotation with Sanhua. And that's something to very important consider. Like, maybe she's just about, like he said, 12-13% more buff-wise, but she's going to have a longer rotation. Let's say that her rotation is, the whole team's rotation is 30 seconds instead of 25 seconds. These are arbitrary numbers. I don't know how long they actually are offhand, but you're going to lose out on rotation time. Let's say over the 2 minutes it takes to get a 3-star clear in the Tower of Adversity, you're going to be barely fitting in all 4 rotations into that 2-minute window with almost no leeway at all. But if your rotation is 25 seconds with Sanhua, you're cutting off 5 seconds per rotation. So at the very end, you're going to have an extra 20 seconds to do a good part of another rotation, which is going to be enough to get a 5th enhanced attack on Camellya. Again, these are just arbitrary numbers. I don't know offhand how long these take, but she's going to take a little bit longer to rotate than Sanhua is. So, longer rotation, less extra rotations you get to do at the end of that 3-minute, that 2-minute window for Tower of Adversity.
On her banner and her weapon banner to actually pull her. But the additional value that she's providing in a lot of situations just isn't worth the expenditure when you already have an awesome option like Sanhua on the roster. So that'll be my take on this character. She's a big...
That, by the way, is a really good thing to point out, Dr. Anarch. Skipping for a Shorekeeper rerun. People that don't have Shorekeeper, I'm probably gonna want to say for a Shorekeeper rerun instead of pulling on this character. As if you don't have Shorekeeper, she is way better than a 4-star character in the sustain slot. The difference between say a Baija or a Yuhu to a Shorekeeper and Roccia to a, excuse me, and, back up a second. I'm stumbling over words, back up a second. The difference between a Baizu or Yoo-hoo to Shorekeeper, and the difference between Sanhua and Roccia, it's a little bit different. Getting Roccia is a little less important than getting a Shorekeeper over the corresponding 4-star options. Just saying. If you don't have Shorekeeper, probably skip her and save for Shorekeeper whenever she comes back around. That might be a good idea.
Big fucking bait, and I don't think she's worth your ass right in pretty much any circumstance. The only situation you should be pulling her is for outside of meta reasons. You just really like her design, you like Pero, you like the casket, you like all of that stuff. But if you're trying to get a meta character, the most bang for your buck in things like the tower or just combat in
That's also another thing to consider. All of this talk is specifically for your account's power. We're talking purely how strong your teams can be. Aesthetically speaking, we're not considering that.
general, skip her. I'm being honest. Just fucking skip her. You will potentially
Agreed.
regret your expenditures here, if I'm being honest. Because Brant and Phoebe, you don't know what they're going to provide. We already know that she already has a very, very good four-star alternative that we've been playing with for a very long time. All right, so with that, let me know what you all think. Am I being way too much of a doomer when it comes to her kit? Is she providing a lot more than I'm actually saying? Honestly, I think I had a very fair shake with her. And I'm hoping that people don't spend a little bit too much on something that's not going to provide too much value on their account. So with that, peace out.
100% agree. I think that's more than fair, what he says about her. I learned a few things in this video, as well, about how some interactions work with stats and buffs. Stuff I didn't expect to learn going into this video. Thanks, chat, by the way. Between you and him, I learned a lot of things. Yeah, I was already thinking like I didn't want to pull on her because I want to be able to pull Phoebe or Brett. Probably gonna pull Stevie because she's very pretty, and I like pretty characters. But man, Brent is hot too, gonna be honest. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys. Y'all like and subscribe to Saintontas. Very good with English creator.